Hi, I'm Danica Tormohlen, reporting for Corporate Event News and Trade Show News Network. I'm joined today by Larry Hanson with ConferenceDirect, and we reached out to Larry today because we wanted to talk to him about producing and creating a carbon neutral event for ConferenceDirect's annual partner meeting earlier this year in Texas. Welcome, Larry.
It's excited to be here. Thanks, Danica.
So, give us a little bit of insight into your background. We were talking in the very beginning, and you said you work with EIC. And so, tell us just a little bit about your background.
I've been in the events industry for a while. Started in the hotel industry and built my way up through there in various leadership positions, and then worked for the it was called Los Angeles Convention and Visitors Bureau back then. And then went and worked at Starwood Hotels as global head of events for about 15 years. And then went back on property as a general manager of a couple of properties in Hawaii, and then joined ConferenceDirect as chief marketing and sustainability officer almost 7 years ago. And so that's a little bit about my background.
So, what inspired ConferenceDirect to pursue a carbon neutral approach for its annual partner meeting this year?
So a couple things. So this is something that a lot of our customers are asking for assistance in, especially corporate in their RFPs. The other thing, it is something I'm personally passionate about. So we started this journey probably about 4 years ago on committing to a 30% reduction by 2030. And then we decided we need to develop a team around this. So we've have about 25 of our conference planners that have been certified by the Event Industry Council in their Sustainable Event Program certification. And part of our commitment in that 2030 was to really get that reduction. You're going to have to do some carbon neutral events. So we figured we would start with our largest event, our annual partner meeting.
And how did the planning guidelines? I know that you worked with the Event Industry Council's Sustainable Events Program certification. So, how did that shape the event's execution?
So yeah, that's a really important document. And it's really good on working with all of, not just the hotel, but your audiovisual, your decor companies, anyone involved in meetings. It's a checklist that really you just go through with them to make sure food and beverage, that you're really reducing electric, water, and waste, and then setting them up that they can track it. So it's something you really have to start from the RFP process to make sure you've got the right vendors, and then that they can execute through that, creating the impact report you need.
So, it just served as a guideline and checklist for you and outlined it for you.
It helps the partners in their kind of journey on the meeting to make sure that they're following the right guidelines.
Were there any challenges to adhering to the guidelines? I'm sure you came across a few.
Yeah, probably the main challenge, and Lowe's is a great partner, and I'm on their board, their customer board, and I said, this is something you guys really have to embrace. And so they did, but obviously going to a hotel that just opened has some unique challenges in that they're working through some of their processes, but they were able to pull it together and did a great job for us. I think that always the goal of that is what I'd mentioned earlier, is really making sure your partner, specifically the hotel, can produce those impact reports. But they were great and they pulled it together and they're really embracing it now. Kudos to Lowe's on embracing sustainability.
Can you walk us through the specific steps that you took to minimize the carbon footprint of the event?
Sure. It really starts from the strategy. What are your goals? And so we knew ours was that 30% reduction. And to get to that goal, you're going to have to buy carbon footprints or carbon offsets, because 85% of your carbon comes from air travel. And until the airline really gets to fully clean fuel, the only way for you to make that goal is to purchase carbon offsets. So one strategy is important. Second step that's very important is in your RFP process, you have the right guidelines and needs from your vendors. And EIC, in addition to their checklist, has some very good RFP templates. So then once you've got those vendors, it's important that you get in front of them right away with that checklist and ensure that they're starting their planning process. And there's probably, 150, 200 pieces of the checklist. So going through that with the vendors, setting them up with that expectation right away, and then doing check-ins throughout, especially when you get into your food and beverage planning. that you're creating the right menus that have the least impact on carbon. So local, organic, no beef, etc. And then really carrying that through, making sure that everything is communicated appropriately. And I always say you break this down into a couple ways. You want to make sure your attendees understand the journey. So putting this on your website, here is what we are doing as a company. Here is what our partners are doing. Here's what the destination does, because you want to go to the right destinations that support recycling, have electrical reduction plans, et cetera. And then here is what you as an attendee can do, because you need to bring them into that journey, because you may be doing things with not serving bottled water. You may be foregoing housekeeping service, things that you want them to understand why you're doing that. And then carrying that through to the impact report. And then once you've got that, one of the things we did that we thought was important for our first carbon neutral was to have it certified by the Alliance for Audited Media, because there's a term called greenwashing, where some people are out there just saying this is what we're doing and we did the reduction, but it may not be validated. So we wanted to make sure we were certified, and we did get the silver award on that. And we were very close to the gold, but because it was a new hotel, there were still some things that they weren't have in process that they probably will, that impacted us on getting the gold. And then sharing that communication with the attendees afterwards, so they understand why you did what you did and the impact of that is important.
We will include a link to, there is a PDF with a one-pager that your team put together, and we'll include a link to that in our show notes and in the story that we do. So you communicated all of that on your website to the attendees.
Yeah, we used it, not just the website, but also the mobile app, some of our push notifications on site, et cetera, because even when I was at Starwood, we weren't doing carbon neutral, but we were following those guidelines. And when you start changing things that they expect, you have to let them know. So otherwise it becomes a negative, and you want them to understand why you're doing the things you do. So usually the first year you have to over communicate, and then they'll start getting it.
That's a great point in terms of using the app and then also push notifications to communicate that, because people do have certain expectations, as something as simple as wanting water or wondering, like you said, about the menu options that you have available. So did you do no beef at the event?
That's always one of the biggest challenges, but we did no beef. I think we had one. It's a journey, as we say. You can't pull everything away. But what we usually try to do is have plant-based options. So if you want sausage on your breakfast, it'll be plant-based. And there's very good options out there that are plant-based that people will be as happy with as the real beef.
And then also you mentioned the 85% of the carbon coming from air travel. So did you measure, for instance, like I've seen some people asking attendees up front, how are they getting to the event? Some questions like that. Did you do something like that to determine?
Yeah, we got everyone's flights, and then we used various apps to track that carbon. And there's some good ones out there for airfare that you can input the flights, and then it gives you the carbon footprint.
That's good to know. Well, do you remember the name of that by chance?
I am blanking, but I can send it to
Okay.
you. I should.
Okay. No problem. I'd love to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the carbon offsets were purchased through Evertree. Can you elaborate on the offset, how it worked, and the significance of planting 3,100 trees in Brazil?
The good thing is there's a lot of options globally. So you want to pick something that aligns with your mission and who you are as a company. So we have done, and I've done throughout my career, a lot of times planting. And a lot of times people think, oh, we'll just go plant trees, that'll offset the carbon. And you have to work with a certified vendor. We looked at what was our best option, and Evertree was very price economically, and also they have where you can view the trees online, you can see the growth. So as we do additional events, we can then add to that forest. And it lives on, is what I like about it. And it really shows the value of what you're doing.
Did you determine like a price per person or like trees per person? How does that work?
So that's a great question. So what we did is we worked as part of our sponsorship. So what we did is the New Orleans CVB was our sponsor, great sponsor. So kudos to them for the sustainability part. Based on the dollars we allocated, I estimated up front. And so I backed into a little bit of that based on our budget. But we did have some good options, but I really like the tree planting, and especially in Brazil where it's really needed.
So you mentioned your partner. So talk about the role that your partners and vendors like New Orleans and Company and the Lowe's Arlington and others played in supporting your sustainability goal. It sounds like they were in on the process from day one.
We got them confirmed up front. And your hotel partner is probably the most important to work with, because outside of air, that's really your carbon footprint. And if you have the right partners like Lowe's, there's some really good ones. Hilton does an excellent job. Hyatt, MGM is really good. Also, we're working with Cvent too, because it's a little challenging right now when you source. It's not easy. Most hotels don't have on their website what are they doing for sustainability. Working with Cvent that if it's a LEED certified or having the right questions to ask in the sourcing is really important. So your hotel partner is very important. But we also brought in our other partners with DMCs, et cetera, to make sure that they have the right impact. And aligning with a sponsorship partner, you want someone that this is a mission to. And then the other partner that is really important is your destination. So bringing that bureau in at the beginning, because I've worked in destinations like Seattle, amazing. They have their documents all set. They talk about waste, water, and electrical reduction. They have green transportation from airport, all those things that you can attach to your website. Now, I've worked with some destinations that are not quite at that level yet. Your hotel and destination partner are key, in my opinion, to making sure you can meet your goals. Because if you don't have the right partner, it's going to be very hard to track it.
Good tip for our listeners here. So, how did you track and measure the carbon footprint of the event? You used an app for like airline to determine the number of carbon offsets needed there. What other metrics and tools were used in the process?
There's a lot of good apps out there, and I can send you some of them. But the main thing is that hotel impact report. And what the impact report does is it measures your wastewater and electrical. And a lot of the hotels have really good systems now where they can input your group and where they're blocked at and track specifically to your group. Because if you are doing things like, hey, we're going to forego housekeeping service, or we're going to service your room, or just pick up garbage, but they can be very specific. So you want to make sure that partner, really the hotel, can track that. And then it usually takes a couple months to get your water and electrical waste bill. It's not going to be immediate. So once they get that, then they create that impact report that really shows everything you did and what that carbon footprint is. So apps are good for like transportation, for your airline, et cetera. But when you get down to your partners, you need them to really also create the impact report.
So then you take that impact report, and you had the Alliance for Audited Media and Vera to verify it. So talk about that process a little bit.
It starts really from the beginning, from the planning. And then they have very specific things that you have to check, take pictures on site. And we actually produced our carbon footprint from it, from the impact report and the trackers. And then they really just make sure everything you're doing is verifiable. Now they can come on site. They didn't come on site for our APM, but that's why we had dedicated a person to assist on getting all the documents, pictures, because you have to go down and make sure they're recycling, all the different things throughout the conference on their checklist. So, our planning team was great on making sure, but we did designate a person to do that. And it always, on a separate note, the first time you're going to do this, I would say it's about a 20-25% lift on the planning. Until it really becomes part of your paradigm on how you plan, the first time it seems a little overwhelming, but then the more you do it, it just becomes part of how you plan. But expect the first time to be a little bit more work, just getting your processes set up.
What lessons did you learn? What are you going to do different now that you've done it this year? I'm assuming you're going to plan for next year to be, again, a carbon neutral event and make some progress a little bit further. But I'm sure you learned a lot by doing this. So what's one thing that you're going to do?
You don't expect to do a carbon neutral event your first year. This has been a 3-year journey for us. So start with okay, we're going to get the right partners, we're going to get the right hotel, we're going to follow the checklist. Do that for a couple years, get your processes set, your communication, your food and beverage planning document, all of those kind of aligned. And then once you feel comfortable, then you can look at trying to do the carbon neutral. But the biggest thing is it's a journey. Don't expect to, I've never done it. My first year, I'm going to do a carbon neutral. Get your processes set, because if you run into something like, okay, the hotel said they can do it and then they can't, that becomes a problem. But you can still follow all the processes. But if they can't create that impact report, that is a challenge because you can't do it on your own. There are some, Cornell has some good tools that I've sent to hotels that don't do it and say, here's the kit on how you can do it, but it's a lot of work for them too on their side.
You also said that you have 7 members on your team who are trained and certified from EIC. Is that right? And are you too? Would you recommend?
We probably have a 2025 that are certified. It's excellent training. It's lengthy. It's about 12 hours, but what it does, it takes the sustainable development goals and then breaks them down by each goal and how that relates to meetings specifically. It's really good. And everyone I know that has taken it has said it's excellent. So if you're starting this journey, I would highly recommend going to EIC, getting their tools and doing the training if you can.
Wonderful advice. How did the attendees and stakeholders respond to your initiatives?
The good thing is this year, pretty good, because this was our third year of following the guidelines. So they knew what to expect. The attendee journey, as I mentioned, is critical. You have, especially the first year you start implementing these, over communicate. In addition to the technology updates, I would make it part of your housekeeping comments. When you're at lunch or breakfast, say, this menu was created with sustainability in line, and here's some things we did. Because it's educational too. But bring them into that journey is really important. And then usually the second or third year, we didn't hear negative on it, on any of our survey feedback on this one, but I have heard it in the past, specifically the first year where you really want to over communicate why you're doing what you are.
How will the success of this one influence your approach to sustainability for future events for not only yourself, but you, like you said, also your clients?
So it's very interesting. And I'll be honest, most customers include this in the RFP, but aren't ready to pull the trigger, especially when it comes from procurement. So the one thing I recommend to all customers is just get started. And one of the things I think is important is do it on a personal level. Personally, I said, okay, let me do this on myself. I have solar, I have an electric car, I compost, I recycle. All those things translate to meetings. When you do it on a personal level, it makes sense. And there's a lot of good blogs out there. If you want, I do a blog on sustainability, but there's a lot of good resources out there that you want to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because if you don't embrace it on a personal level, it becomes harder to translate that to the meeting. So I would say start on a personal level. I'm still doing little things. It's never going to be 100%. You just want to keep pulling the trigger because that'll help translate it to meetings for you.
We work with Honeycomb and they do a regular column for us. I don't know if you worked with Honeycomb at all, a sustainability consultancy in the industry. And we work with them to provide some content on sustainable events. And I know one of the things they always say, and I hear it all the time, is just get started, right? It's like baby steps. You don't have to go out of the gate and put yourself in a position to fail, but just at least get started and then it will get the ball rolling.
Yeah, like especially the communication side, we build on it every year because here's where it started and then we grow it and you over communicate. But part of that, there's more things you start doing as you in your planning process. So you want them to understand everything you're doing.
Do you think that did it cost you money? Did it get offset by sponsorship revenue or dollars? Or how did that work?
If you're gonna do an audited one and purchase carbon, there is a cost to that. To purchase carbon offsets, even when we did as much planning on sustainability as we could, probably cost us, I think, around $9,000, and then to audit it, et cetera, and that additional labor to plan it. But people think, oh, this is going to cost me more for my meeting. It usually reduces your cost. You can offset some of those things with not serving bottled water or or doing different things with your food and beverage that impact it. So don't think your actual meeting costs increase. It's just if you go to purchase carbon offsets, it could impact your costs and
Okay.
budget.
That's
And sponsorship is a great way if you can align yourself with people that have that same mission.
because you worked, like you said, with New Orleans as a partner. Are you holding your meeting there next year? Is that
No, we would love to go to New Orleans. Next year it's going to be Philadelphia. But Philadelphia has good guidelines and the hotel does. That's a good thing. And then hopefully we're trying to confirm New Orleans to come in as a sponsor for next year.
I can tell how passionate that you are about this, and obviously your involvement in the industry, a blog, which I did not see. So I'm going to go track that down, and I'll also include a link to that as well. I'm fascinated to see that. But what's the thing that you're most proud of when you reflect back and look at this particular event?
It's interesting. Where it started was probably 7 years ago. We were on a pitch for a customer, and sustainability was big for them. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I gave a very vague answer. And she said, "No, what are you doing?" And there were four of us sitting there, and we're like, and so that triggered me to say, oh my God, we got to get behind this. And then the more I got into this, understanding what's going on globally and the impact, I became very passionate because it's a serious issue. And to be honest, meetings are behind. We're not leading this. We're at the tail end. So we got to embrace this as a community. And meeting planners, even if your leadership is not behind it, get them behind it. You become the driver. And that's what I did with our company. As I said, we got to do this. One, yes, our customers are asking for us, but two, we've got to be a leader in this space because we've got to reduce our carbon footprint in the meetings industry. And being one of the bigger organizations supporting that, I knew we could have an impact on it.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that the meeting industry is behind. I think it is catching up
Yeah.
slowly but surely. And like you said, even though there are corporations that are starting to track it or asking for these kind of things, whether they're doing it yet fully is another story. But it is starting to become part of public company reporting and things like that.
We have a large volume account that is starting, but they had a 5-tier journey. Meetings were at the bottom. And the hard part is
Oh,
meetings for most company is an unknown thing for leadership. Like they don't understand it. So meeting planners, my mission to you is embrace it. And I speak at a lot of different industry events on it because I tell them you have to get this behind. So the why it's important and understanding the impact of global warming is critical. And that's why once you start seeing that impact and that, yes, you personally can have an impact, you got to embrace it.
thank you so much, Larry, for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Yeah, no, it's been my pleasure. And anytime I can share sustainability and the importance of it and get people behind it, I welcome that opportunity.